I'm Rolando.
I'm Elizabeth.
In this video, we're going to be focusing on London in the 1960s, and we're going to compare some research we found to the book, which is called The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One thing that really stood out to me was the amount of crime that happened in London. The first case that comes to me is with that little girl that was walking around in London, and Hyde came over to her and he kind of stomped on her and ran away. What ended up happening was a crowd ended up finding this out, and then they kind of forced him to pay them money. And when he gave the money, everything was kind of cleared away, and Hyde basically got away with it. Like, I'm pretty sure there was a few other crimes that also happened in the book.
The second crime that was reported was the murder of Mr. Carew, who was a wealthy man who was walking around in London and stopped to ask for directions or something from Hyde, and he killed him by beating him to death with a stick, which was a very violent death.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I mean, he must have really been bleeding like a lot. I mean, like with a stick. I mean, I feel like it'd take like a few beatings, you know what I mean?
That poor girl who had to watch it happen from the window.
Yeah, oh yeah, like she was just looking out, and wow, that's it must have been a very horrific thing.
Traumatizing.
Yeah, I'd say. When I think of the crime that Hyde committed, like with a little girl, it kind of reminds me of prostitution, because in London in the 1960s, prostitution was pretty huge for the girls and the young kids then. And the way that Hyde was able to just pay the family and then everything was just settled, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that definitely ties back to child prostitution, especially the way that he didn't react to his crime. He just kept walking until someone came and called him out on it.
Yeah, true. And like the wealthy people in the book seem to have gotten away like with a lot of things as well.
They did, especially Mr. Jekyll, and how he was able to finance 2 lives for himself. One being lower class, when housing for lower class was extremely scarce in the 1900s.
And like the lawyer in the book too, he had his living was pretty decent.
It was decent. I think he had at least one servant, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Jekyll was definitely more well off than the lawyer, though.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like scientists. Well, lawyers tend to make a lot of money too.
But Jekyll was a doctor, and his circle were doctors, so there's that. They made more for sure.
I see. That makes sense. Another thing that was pretty big in London is like drug use. LSD, weed, that was very big. And when you take drugs like that, it plays a huge effect on your mind. It makes you start seeing things, you hallucinate. And when Jekyll was taking that portion, it just kind of reminded me of like LSD and stuff, because it's kind of playing that toll on your mind and making you see things differently.
All of the supernatural elements could have been a hallucination if you look at it like that, especially from the lawyer's point of view, and most of the story was told from his point of view anyway.
Yeah.
Other than the servant.
Yeah, like the servant was really the only one that was able to see like the different side of Jekyll.
But he only saw it in a quick glance before he died, just that he was shorter and had a darker presence than Jekyll.
Jekyll had a partner who was also a scientist, and he revealed his true side to him. And then in the story, like the shock was so huge, like that he said he was gonna die in like a few days, and then it ended up happening. He like prophesied his own prophecy.
Could that have tied back into drug use too?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean that makes sense. Cause like
overdose or something.
Yeah. I mean, overdosed. Well, because like it was a shock to his system, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It freaked him out for sure.
Yeah, to the extreme. In London too, like there was the upper class and the lower class. I think the divide was pretty clear. Like there was really no way of not seeing it.
The wealthy upper class and the poor lower class, yeah. most of the story was told from the upper class perspective, but you could definitely see the lower class in the amount of servants that were used by the upper class.
And in London in the 1960s, the wealthy people were pretty much known for having a lot of servants and maids inside their houses. And in the book, we kind of saw a lot of that too. It's almost as if Jekyll's life is basically run by his people.
Yeah, he probably never had to do anything for himself as a child or really as an adult either. He just went at his own pace, got an education and a good job.
His upbringing, I don't remember in the book they talking about it too much, because I do wonder if he kind of got a good handout, you know what I mean, and then was able to build from there.
They mentioned that he was privileged. He was born privileged and that he was born with natural talent, which helped him a lot with getting his education and becoming a well-renowned doctor in his community.
And it's definitely not easy to become a doctor at all, or a lawyer, like all those other high-paying jobs in the book.
So he never had to experience the dirty, crowded, lower-class living until he became Hyde and split his life into two parts.
See, like Hyde still got a good of the wealth too, because Jekyll kind of signed over a lot of his stuff to him.
He did. I guess because they were the same person, he wanted his other half to have all the stuff that he had too. Because Hyde was the darker half of Jekyll, and he wanted all the things that Hyde wanted, but he just didn't want to get caught.
So like I was kind of confused. So I'm wondering if Jekyll was himself when he wrote, like when he signed like the will, you know what I mean? Or was it Hyde that did it? Because like in the story, I was always getting kind of confused on who is doing what.
It could have been either if the lawyer wasn't present, but if the lawyer was present, then it was definitely Jekyll. And Jekyll definitely defended Hyde to the lawyer when the lawyer was talking about how annoyed he was with the terms of the will.
And like the lawyer thought too that Hyde was trying to kill Jekyll.
He did. He definitely thought something underhanded was going on.
See, but the whole time though, like every time the lawyer kept coming up with conclusions, they're just way far-fetched and completely wrong, because he was missing like a key piece of the puzzle.
He thought he was being murdered up until the very end of the book when they barged into his study and found Hyde dead from suicide.
And then he got a note from Jekyll that told him to like meet him at a certain location. And that's when Jekyll turned into Hyde in front of him. Or was Hyde, or
That was the other doctor.
Okay, I see.
The lawyer found all of the papers in the end that told him that Jekyll and Hyde were the same person and explained the whole story from the beginning.
I see. See, like this whole book, like there's so many different things happening.
It's
like that.
Really confusing.
Yeah, it's so hard to put the pieces together. Like when I was reading the book, like I thought, to me, it didn't seem like that Jekyll was changing into a different person. It just seemed like that Hyde was a different character doing his thing.
At first, that's what I saw too. The book was chaotic at best.
Yeah, I think that's a good description for it.
It was very short though.
Yeah, it was definitely a quick read. This was the end of the video, and what we essentially did was we talked about London in the 1960s, and we tried to compare a lot of things that happened in the book called The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to it. There were two other people that were supposed to join us for this video. The first one was Paige, but she got COVID. Well, one of her friends got COVID, and she's worried that she might have it as well, so she could not be in this video. And Alex could not join either because he is actually not on campus this semester. I don't think so. We're at like 9:35. What else is there to cover?
Unless we mention the fog, there's really nothing else.
Okay. I mean, what's
Like
your...
how smoggy the London was and the fog that he had to peer through when he was going to see if Jekyll was dead. But I don't know how we could tie that in at this point.
Yeah. I guess I could just do the closing and then call that good.
Sure.
I hope you guys found a lot of value from this video, and we'll see you in the next one. I don't think there'll be a next one because this was the
Next
last
one.
video. Yeah. I'm just so used to saying that though, because in my videos, that's how I always kind of end things.